Today we're taking a look at the Mint InstantFlex TL70 Plus. This is a twin lens reflex camera that uses Instax square film. It's an updated version of the original TL70, which used Instax mini film. However, they've added quite a bit of new upgrades and features from the TL70, not just the film size. Mint Camera was kind enough to send this camera over to me a couple of weeks ago, and they did say I get to keep the camera, so just full transparency there, but they didn't ask me to make a video. They're not going to see this video before it goes live. I'm still going to give you my honest opinions on this camera, good and bad, and just share what it's been like shooting with it so far for the last couple of weeks. Some of the big updates to the camera coming from the original TL70, like I mentioned, you're using Instax square film as opposed to Instax mini, and to accommodate composing with that bigger frame, you have a 33% larger viewfinder, and it's also a brighter viewfinder as well. Inside the viewfinder, they also have a new OLED display, which gives you all of the information you need in regards to your exposure. So you have your light meter, aperture and shutter speed display, as well as the flash display, letting you know whether the flash is on, whether it's ready to fire or not, and all of the controls being right there where you would naturally be holding the camera. It's nice not having to take your eye away from the camera at all as you're shooting. As you make the changes in real time, you see that on the OLED display, and this just makes for a much quicker and less cumbersome shooting experience. You have a 3-element glass aspherical lens that's multi-coated with a 35mm equivalent focal length of 33mm. Right above the lens, they've hidden this built-in flash right behind the InstantFlex branding. You just press this little button on the side, the logo flips up, and there's your built-in flash. The bigger and brighter viewfinder inside the camera is a Fresnel viewfinder with an anti-reflection coating. You also have a pop-up magnifier inside that viewfinder to really help with critical focus. I think without a doubt one of the most appealing things about this camera is giving you full manual control of your exposure, so you can change your aperture and shutter speed however you need. Your aperture ranges from f5.6 to f22, and your shutter speed goes from 1/500th of a second all the way down to 1 second. You also have bulb and time settings for long exposures, which are able to go all the way up to a 10-minute exposure. If you don't want to control the exposure manually, you do have some automatic controls here. You just choose the aperture on the lens itself and set the shutter speed dial to auto. That's going to choose the appropriate shutter speed for you based on the light in your scene. And if you want to add some exposure compensation, there is auto +1 and auto -1. If you like to shoot multiple exposures, you have unlimited freedom with this camera. There's no, multiple exposure mode that you need to set. The camera has a manual eject button on the side, so you can just continue shooting frame on top of frame on top of frame. It's not going to eject the photo until you actually hit the eject button there. Right above that eject button, you also have this little display that's going to tell you how many frames you have left in that pack of film. You have a threaded shutter button on the front of the camera, so if you'd like to use a soft release or a cable release, it is going to work on this camera. To power this camera, you just need 2 AA batteries. The battery compartment is on the bottom of the camera right next to the 1/4-20 mount. I do kind of wish there was a rechargeable battery inside the camera. That way I could just plug it in anytime I'm not using it, or if I'm out shooting and I just want to charge it with a power bank or in the truck while I'm driving. That I think would be really nice, but that would probably also affect the price of the camera. So it does take AA batteries. They're not expensive, they're easy to find, and you could always get rechargeable AA's, but for me, I do still think I would prefer the internal battery, but that's really a minor thing. The camera comes with a 5-year warranty, which is nice, and it also comes with a lifelong Mint membership. That's going to give you eligibility for discounts and services from Mint Camera. Some general impressions after just a couple of weeks using this camera. The light meter so far has been really reliable and accurate. Being able to read the light meter easily when it's overexposed or underexposed. It's a really simple, easy to read kind of setup, and again, it's been nice and accurate. That kind of thing is sort of a make or break for me. If the light meter isn't accurate and I constantly have to work against it or second guess it, that's going to play a big role in how much I actually use the camera, but it's been nice and reliable so far. There is a filter set for this camera that's going to give you several ND filters as well as a close-up filter. That to me feels like a necessity for this camera. Like I wouldn't use this camera without having those filters with me. So it is something you're always going to have to bring. The filters come in this little pouch that's sort of a microfiber cloth doubling as a filter pouch. Instax square film is 800 speed and the maximum shutter speed on this camera is 1/500th of a second. So if you're shooting in daylight and you want to open up the lens to f5.6, maybe for a portrait or anything where you really want to get that shallow depth of field, you're definitely going to need to throw one of the ND filters on there in order to control the exposure. So that is an extra thing you're going to have to always remember to bring with you, is that set of filters, but I think it is a necessity for using this camera. It drastically improves just the versatility of the camera, being able to use it in a number of different scenarios. And the close-up filter is an absolute game changer for Instax film. It gives me that same kind of feeling of how I like to use my SX70, being able to focus that close. I really like to get in close, fill the frame. You can do that with this camera with the close-up filter. Without the filter, you can focus up to 0.7 meters, which is already pretty close. And if you like to use rangefinders, you're kind of already used to working with that minimum focus distance. But the close-up filter, you can get insanely close. You do need to experiment with it a little bit and just kind of get used to how much you need to adjust your framing when you're focusing that close. You're looking through the top lens and you're shooting through the bottom lens, so the closer you get, the more of that difference you're really going to see in your framing. Parallax compensation, as they call it. I do wish the filters were able to be stacked. So if I'm using an ND filter, that means I can't use a close-up filter. If I'm using a close-up filter, I'm not going to be able to throw an ND on there. So there is a trade-off there. I do wish they were stackable, but still, the filter set, in my opinion, it's an absolute necessity for this camera. And the TLR design is just timeless. Not just how it looks, but how it feels when you're shooting with one. This is by far the most enjoyable Instax camera I've ever used. But that comes at a price. Let's talk about the price because I'd say that's going to be the biggest point of contention when it comes to this camera. The camera retails for $699 USD, $700. As far as I know, this is the most expensive Instax square camera on the market. Most Instax cameras on the market are ranging from $120 to $200. So over 3 times that price for this one camera. Some would say, that's insane, why would you pay that much for an instant camera? The lens, the complete control over your exposure and your focus, the more advanced features, the shooting experience, that specifically is what you're paying for with this camera over the others. If you want to get the most out of your Instax square film, the most out of your Instax square shooting experience, you're a hardcore Instax square enthusiast, this is the camera to get. However, if you're not that person, if you only use Instax film occasionally for snapshots and parties, things like that, I would say you're much better off buying a much simpler and more affordable camera on the market. I don't think this camera is for that crowd at all. It's definitely a niche kind of camera, meant as a small company aimed specifically at instant photography enthusiasts. Their entire range gives you something different that you're not going to get anywhere else. So this isn't going to be the most popular Instax camera on the market, but I think they're aiming to do something different and cater to the specific people who want this kind of control and shooting experience if they're using Instax square that much. I've always loved instant film. I've been having a lot of fun with this one, so huge thanks to Mint Camera for sending this over to me. If you've been interested in checking out this camera or wanting to know more about it, I hope this video was helpful for you. I'll have links down below to the Mint website. They'll have all of the information you need right there as well. And finally, a big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. When I first created mattdayphoto.com 10 years ago, I did it with Squarespace. This was long before they ever decided to sponsor my channel, but I chose Squarespace because it was just a no-brainer. They had everything I needed in one place, and all these years later, they're still continuing to build and add new features to their service, all while keeping it extremely easy to use while you do it yourself. Drag and drop customization, tons of different templates to choose from, along with 24/7 award-winning customer service that are always there when you need them. You can share your work there, have a place where people can contact you or even schedule appointments. You can even set up your own online store. Since I launched mattdayphoto.com, I've sold my own zines, photo books, prints, and merch all through my own website. No need to use a third-party service, and they also have tons of different plugins from third parties to keep everything in one place. keeping track of your inventory, shipping fulfillment, it's all a breeze with their built-in tools. It's never been easier to build your own website, and you can start a free trial by going to squarespace.com/mattday. Use the promo code MattDay at checkout for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That'll do it for this video. If you have any other questions or thoughts on the InstantFlex TL70 Plus, we can keep the conversation going in the comments down below. So thank you all for watching. I love you guys. I'll see you soon.